Hi, I'm Brian. Thanks for being here today. I'm looking forward to writing and talking about writing with you. So I am a writer and a writing teacher, and I live here in Portland. And most of what I write is memoir. So I write true stories about my life and about others' lives sometimes as well. My first book was Going Somewhere, and that was about a cross-country bicycle trip that I took from Wisconsin, where I grew up, to here, to Portland. The trip took about 2 months, and writing the book took about 5 years. My next book, which is going to come out next year, is called This Is Not For You. I wrote it collaboratively with Richard Brown, an 81-year-old activist and photographer who has done just a ton of work over the last several decades on behalf of Portland's Black community. That's not actually the cover for the book. Since the book isn't out yet, we don't have a cover. That's just a picture of Mr. Brown. And I'll just tell you, he is a really inspiring, wonderful person. And I hope that you get the chance to read his story. All right, so today we're going to write about where we are right now. And before we get into that, I want to say that I think writing words down, it's just a small part of writing. To be a writer, we have to pay attention. We have to notice the world around us, pay attention to it, and be curious about it. And I think that we have to believe that our lives are full of stories. That if we really pay attention, we can find meaning all around us and tell really big stories about things that might seem very little. So to get started doing this, we're going to do a free write together. And the idea with the free write is simple. And if you've done a lesson before, you've already heard this. But for those of you who are starting with this lesson, what you're going to do is I'll give you a prompt, and then I'll tell you how long you can write for. And the whole time, you just want to keep writing. Just keep your pen moving or keep your fingers moving across the keys. If you can't think of anything to write, you can really just write that. You can write, I don't know what to write. You can write, you can just write a whole bunch of dots until you get yourself to the point that you're writing something again that you're interested in. But the idea is just keep going. Don't edit yourself. Just see what comes out. So today, what we're going to do to start is I want you to just write about what has happened so far in your day, what you've done today. And again, don't worry if it seems boring to you. Just recount what you've done and what you've seen and heard and tasted and thought. You can just write a list if you would want, or if you'd like to do that. But I've also got a couple of prompts if that would be helpful for you. So the two prompts that I came up with are when I woke up or the first thing I heard. So again, you're just going to write about your day so far using those prompts if you would like, and you'll have about 5 minutes to do this. So what you can do is just hit pause on the video and write for 5 minutes and then come back and I'll be waiting here. All right? All right, welcome back. I hope you got some good writing done, and I hope you enjoyed thinking back about everything that your day has held so far. So like I said, we are going to write today about where we are, about noticing our surroundings and pulling stories from them. And I've got some writing that I'd like to share with you to get you moving in that direction. And it's a piece of writing by a writer named Abigail Thomas. So Abigail Thomas lives in New York with her dogs. And her academic education, and I got this from her website, this is her author bio, her academic education stopped when, pregnant with her oldest daughter, she was asked to leave Bryn Mawr during her first year. She has written 6 books. I really like that she says that she makes that distinction between what we think of as the important education and then the education that she has had that has allowed her to write 6 books. Maybe she couldn't stay at Bryn Mawr because of some awful policies at that school, but she's been able to write a ton. So we're going to read her essay, a very short essay called Spring with Dogs. Spring with Dogs by Abigail Thomas. I know it's almost spring because there is mud everywhere, tracked in by the dogs. Floors, chair, couch, bed. I don't mind. Good, clean mud, I say to myself. At night, varmints abound, and my hound dog Cooper wakes at 5 every morning, howling. Daphne and Sadie start barking, and after 5 minutes of this, I get up, go into the kitchen, and open the door. More howling. I turn the lamps on, hoping it will look as though I am doing something important that can only be done at this hour. I make coffee. As soon as it gets light, I sit on the porch. Wind knocks the wet off trees down the block, but doesn't cross to our side of the street. Instead, another breeze comes from the north into our yard. How does the wind go about its business? My dog Sadie licks rain off the onion grass in its black pot, and I drink more coffee, light another cigarette. After a bit, I get up from my damp chair, find shoes, walk in the yard. With spring, the ice is starting to melt. Bits of the past have begun to appear. The top of a carrot, discarded by a dog months ago. Twists of tinfoil, licked clean of whatever they once held. Somebody's shoe. Snow is again in the forecast, but no sign of it so far. Maybe I'll find my daughter's cell phone, my moonstone ring, and the flashlight. There is a book by the wild grass, uncovering itself next to the dripping privet. I bend down. It's Lawrence of Arabia, beginning to appear under the drifts of snow. So I really like what Abigail Thomas does here and what she gives us permission to do, because it's so simple, right? She just lets us wake up with her and then follow the dogs out to the porch and sit and look around. Not a whole lot happens, but I think it really comes alive as a piece of writing for a few reasons. First off, there's the details. You get all the sounds of the dogs. You get that bit of Sadie licking the rain off the onion grass. And all of these discarded bits, right? Discarded by a dog. I love that line about bits of the past have begun to appear. And I also just think that her voice is really fun. Good, clean mud. And I love her question. I love that she has that question in there about the wind. I feel like it really stops the piece for a second and makes me sit there with her in that chair and wonder about that. And I think then there's finally just the feeling of the piece, the feeling that beneath this world that she is used to seeing, there is so much more that's about to be discovered. So I want you to try to do something similar to what Abigail Thomas did in that essay. And to start, what I'd like for you to do is think about something that is central to your life now, this spring. Abigail Thomas focuses on dogs. Maybe you'll choose cats, or the coronavirus, or Fortnite, or family. And once you've chosen this thing that is central to you and to your life this spring, what I would like you to do is write as Abigail Thomas does about spring, but focusing on that thing that you just thought of, the thing that's central to your life. You can title your piece Spring with fill in the blank if you'd like. And as you write, I want you to try to get in lots of sensory details, lots of smells and sights and touches and sounds. Get in as much of your particular world as possible. That world that maybe, can sometimes feel boring because you live in it all the time. Remember that all of your readers, myself included, we don't, and we're really curious and we'd love to hear about it. And so get those details in, and then also see if you can ask a question or two, like Abigail Thomas does. So I have a few prompts for you to get you started. You can, of course, write whatever you would like, but if it would help, you can use "this spring is" or "as soon as it gets light." Again, you'll have 10 minutes to write. And so when you're ready, you can just press pause on the video and get started. And when you're done, I'll be right here. Ready? Okay, go. All right, I hope you got some good writing done. I'm really curious to know what has been central to your spring, and I hope I get to read it. Before we end, I've got one more thing that I'd like to read for you. And this is a bonus reading and a bonus exercise. And it's also about noticing the everyday, noticing what's around us, and about keeping track of that world around us and our place in it. And by doing this very writerly thing, keeping a notebook. So I'm going to read you now a short excerpt from an essay by a writer named Joan Didion. And the essay is called "On Keeping a Notebook." So this is Joan Didion, pictured when she was much younger. and she launched her career in 1960 when she won a contest sponsored by Vogue magazine. Since then, she's written almost 20 books. She's written novels, short stories, a ton of essays, memoir, screenplays, a lot of different writing. And all of her writing is really about paying attention. So I'm going to read this section of her essay on keeping a notebook. And it's a little wordy, but there's some really cool ideas in there that I wanted to share. So here we go. An excerpt from On Keeping a Notebook by Joan Didion. I sometimes delude myself about why I keep a notebook. Imagine some thrifty virtue derives from preserving everything observed. See enough and write it down, I tell myself, and then some morning, when the world seems drained of wonder, some day when I am only going through the motions of doing what I am supposed to do, which is right, on that bankrupt morning, I will simply open my notebook and there it will be, a forgotten account with accumulated interest, paid passage back to the world out there, dialogue overheard in hotels and elevators and at the hat check counter in Pavillon, impressions of Bettina Apteker and Benjamin Sonnenberg and Teddy Stouffer, careful appercoup about tennis bums and failed fashion models and Greek shipping heiresses, one of whom taught me a significant lesson, a lesson I could have learned from F. Scott Fitzgerald, but perhaps we must all meet the very rich for ourselves by asking, when I arrived to interview her in her orchid-filled sitting room on the second day of a paralyzing New York blizzard, whether it was snowing outside. I imagine, in other words, that the notebook is about other people, but of course it is not. I have no real business with what one stranger said to another at the hat check counter in Pavillon. In fact, I suspect that the line, "That's my old football number," touched not my own imagination at all, but merely some memory of something once read. Nor is my concern with a woman in a dirty crepe de chine wrapper in a Wilmington bar. My stake is always, of course, in the unmentioned girl in the plaid silk dress. Remember what it was to be me. That is always the point. And that last line for me is the point, is what's most important about this essay. What this essay and what keeping a notebook is all about, I think, is, again, remembering what it was to be you, the writer. So, maybe all the things around you, the things that you see and hear and say and think, maybe they don't feel so important or special to you right now because you're used to them. But what you notice and what you notice about what you notice, that says a ton about you. Just by keeping track of what you notice, you paint a picture of who you are. You help yourself remember what it is to be you at all these different points in your life. And plus, you have building blocks for all sorts of other things that you might someday write, just because you have these observations and these thoughts kept in one place. So again, this is just a bonus, but if you like this essay and if you like the idea of keeping a notebook, I've got a little exercise for you. And the first thing I want you to do is get up from your chair, get up from wherever you're sitting right now. And I want you to go take a lap around where you are. Bring a journal or bring your worksheet if you would like. And as you walk, I want you to stop in each room and just look around. Try to find something you don't usually look at or smell or touch. And just linger there for a little bit. Notice it. You can look out the windows too, see what's happening out there. Look in drawers, look in cupboards, in hidden places, in places that you maybe don't look that often. I want you to be curious. Be curious about this space that you're probably very, very used to right now. And if you do find anything that piques your interest, that you're curious about, that you notice something about that you maybe hadn't before, I want you to write that down. Write what you noticed, and if you want, what you think about it. Again, give yourself just 10 minutes to do this. And if you enjoy it, do it again tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next. And then soon you'll have this notebook full of the things that you observe, that you care about, that you're curious about, that'll help paint a picture for you of who you are at this time. So again, you can do that right now, or you can just do it at any point today. I want to thank you again for writing with me today. I really hope you'll join me for another one of these lessons, and I hope you'll consider submitting your writing for the anthology. It's going to be published in just a little bit here. I am coming to the reading as well. We're going to have a virtual reading at the end of May, and I'll be reading at that as well. And above all, I just really hope that you keep writing and making art and getting your voice out there. You and your stories really matter, and I hope to get the chance to hear and read them. Thanks again.